Purity culture. One of the most intrusive yet subtle factors of the Christian overculture is purity. An obsession with snow-white, flawless vanilla purity. A culture fixated on keeping each other in a certain standard, conforming to what some long-dead elders believed we should, and creating a subservience to that conformity. Likely, this started with St. Augustine, whose own sexual proclivities and internal dualism influenced Christianity. Since then, the church has been more focused on lust than the other 6 deadly sins. Greed, wrath, gluttony, pride, and envy are fine, as they benefit capital, with sloth being looked down upon, but not nearly as vilified as lust. Like many things in the Christian overculture, we must examine this in order to deprogram it. We must cultivate a healthy relationship with lust. Lust, after all, breeds life. Letting go of our shame, not controlling what others wear, or how they feel. We must let go of the antithesis of liberty, conformity, and allow ourselves to explore our lust in healthy, consensual ways. Consent and self-accountability are the keys here. If a woman dresses a certain way, it's my responsibility, not hers, to keep my gaze respectable. They're my eyes, and she should have the freedom to dress how she wants. If I do look, I shouldn't gawk or make her feel uncomfortable. My lust is my responsibility, no one else's. Modesty is one choice out of hundreds of styles, and it's oppressive and frankly anti-freedom to tell someone they must conform to something they don't want to. Part of deconstructing the Christian framework many of us were raised in is questioning everything. Conformity and the conservation of the status quo hates being questioned. But if you want to live as a free, liberty-loving pagan, you must question conformity. Question everything. Why do we do the things we do? Are these rules and laws useful, or just some Karen trying to control us? Conformity is the antithesis of liberty. Rökr. The Rökr are the dark gods, Loki's children, the Jotnar and Surtur's kin. Loki sits on the cusp of the Rökr and Aesir, as tricksters are the bridge between chaos/shadow and order. We often see a projection of purity onto the Rökr. Those of us who haven't deconstructed Christian dualism will supplant Satan with Loki and the Jotnar with demons. But that's not the pagan perception. The arch-heathens saw the gods and Vatir as just another aspect of the natural world. Thor isn't always benevolent. Odin often engages in selfish behavior, and Loki's children are not evil. Just like the thorns on a blackberry bush aren't malevolent, but can feel that way if you fall into them. The natural world doesn't have evil, as we've been taught. We see this with wolves, attributed to be satanic by fearful, superstitious medieval Christians. What's more evil? Genocide of an entire species, or a few less livestock? The Irish and Japanese wolf are both extinct because of fear and vilification. This mentality still exists today with the sheepdog and wolf hunter frame of mind. An extremely harmful otherizing philosophy that is taught to law enforcement by a man who's never done the job a day in his life. He was army and fought wars. Now he teaches people who should be learning to de-escalate how to be mentally, physically, and spiritually prepared to kill.
I am convinced from a lifetime of study, if you fully prepare yourself, in most cases, killing is just not that big a deal.
Luckily, sheepdog is quickly becoming a pejorative in the tactical professions. Unfortunately, not fast enough. These people categorize civilians as sheep, protectors as sheepdogs, and criminals as wolves. This black and white thinking leads to the mentality that some people are inherently bad, disregarding the circumstances that lead to crime and treating the symptom like it's the disease. This puritanical dismissal of the shadow, the Rökr, is a sign that the individual is ignoring their own shadow, the dark parts of themselves. This is why those in positions of authority condemning certain peoples they disagree with are often the biggest abusers and solve problems using violence and force. In reality, they see the parts of their shadow they ignore, and the hate and vitriol they feel is the beast in their shadow trying to break free. It's better to make peace with your shadow, accept that the Rökr may not be as pleasing as the Aesir or Vanir, but they're still part of us, and ignoring the beast within, that animal part of yourself, means, just like Fenrir, it will one day grow. to consume you. Ingerbodha, commonly mispronounced and misspelled Ingerboda by those who haven't been told this is an F, not a D, is the archetypal anti-mother, or mother of monsters. When I do a deep dive video on her, we'll go more in depth. But a few cognates are Echidna, Greek, and Lilith, Hebrew. Essentially women depicted as everything a mother and woman shouldn't be. Lilith was likely inspired by the Lilitu, a demon connected to Inanna, Mesopotamian, aka Ishtar, Babylonian, the goddess of love. Inanna is a cognate of Freya and Aphrodite. So we see the connection to society's perception of women. Lilith was a later addition to Hebrew mythology, as the first wife of Adam was not properly named until much later. Essentially, the anti-mother was a vilification of traits the ruling male hierarchy didn't like. While modern purity culture is Christian, its earlier incarnations had similar intentions: to control what the ruling status quo disliked, to enforce conformity through strict shame and ridicule. Basically, if you can get someone's peers to insult and mock them, you don't have to do it yourself. Wild hair, promiscuity, being seductive, and any form of independence was looked down upon by the status quo. Many cultures have used this. Lilith was the progenitor of the succubi and incubi, female and male demons that would seduce to feed off their prey. Today, Lilith is seen by many as a figure of feminine independence. Similarly, Ingerbodha represents these qualities in the Norse perspective, a wild-haired witch of the Iron Woods, a Roker goddess that defies the status quo and goes against the grain of conformity. Mother to Loki's monstrous children, we see that not only are her relationships unconventional, their children are as well. Both Loki and Ingerbodha defy conformity. As a vulva, she would be venerated, but as we've seen in context of purity culture, strong, independent women who don't need no man and don't fall into line with the hierarchy of the status quo are often vilified. As freedom-loving pagans, it's important that we don't shame and control others. All pagans are valid, as long as their beliefs don't cause harm. Except that, even though you don't understand someone else's path, it's important to them. Respect is default. The whole respect is earned cliche is bullshit. You don't immediately start disrespecting people. Most people are polite, unless they're belligerent assholes. And in a religious culture that practices we are our deeds, it only makes sense to judge actions, not choices that don't affect us. Be like Ingerbodha. Don't be a judgmental prick.